Hey, Friars, welcome to the demo day on Friday the 13th. So that's pretty spooky, if you ask me. I don't think our demo day will actually be that spooky, though. It's pretty low key in a way. We'll start by showing off the yield farming interface, which y'all can go and try out. And yeah, then we will talk over some stuff with governance. So let me go there now. All right, so share screen. Okie dokie. No, I don't need to do that because it's up, it's live. If you go to this URL, here's what you see. So currently there's a very high ABY because not many people have joined up yet. Uh-oh. Let me get my password right. Oh yeah. All right. Yeah, so here you can see I already have some rewards because I was using this earlier, messing around with it. But when you first get here, of course, there'll be an unlock sign. In fact, well, I don't really think that's too necessary to show, but there'll be a little unlock sign here that you use to enable the deposit. Once you've done that and you've signed it, you can click here. It defaults to the max value you can put in. You can change that if you want. I'll just do one just for fun. This is a very small amount of liquidity because I don't really have much in this wallet. And for the benefits of the demo day, I'm going to go ahead and make this fast. You can see I have transaction mining here. You can click here and check on the Etherscan.
And that's something we've now put into the framework of the dashboard as well, right? So we don't need to do that work again.
Yeah, so if I, oh, I don't have a way to click around on dashboard yet. Let me just try this. If I go to sentiment, oh, you can see the deposit just went through. And my
okay, cool. So the deposit is now reflected, and now we see your available rewards are starting to tick over.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And yeah, I can withdraw a certain amount if I want, or I can claim the Fry rewards specifically without withdrawing anything. Or if you're done with the whole program, you can click on this button and that will withdraw. If I just mouse over here, you'll be able to see exit with all assets, Fry and ETH Fry. So that's just a quick exit with everything. I'll go ahead and do that. And now what I was curious about is if I change the URL to go to a different part of the dashboard, yeah, you can see I can still watch the transactions mining here. This dashboard doesn't involve any Etherscan transactions. The only part of the dashboard that does is the farming. But as we add more to the dashboard, you'll be able to navigate around, and they'll all have certain common elements. So, yep. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't know if there's really even much more to demo other than when this actually finishes up, everything will pop back up into my unstaked balance here. I will note on the, someone asked in the Telegram, if you stake your liquidity here, do you still accrue the normal fees that a liquidity provider gets when they get volume? And the answer is yes. Correct me, Skulk, if I'm wrong about this, but basically, the way this contract works is you put your liquidity in, and when you take it out, you get the same liquidity back plus whatever Fry rewards you got. And that liquidity that you put in, that amount will be actually worth a little bit more depending on how much volume was traded in the liquidity.
Yeah, so you continue to earn the fees. So it's 0.3% at the moment, 0.3%. Yeah, for the Ether Fry pair on Uniswap. Yeah,
right. So that's how much you make on each trade, proportional to your liquidity. And then on top of that, if you use if you use this interface, you get the Fry rewards accumulating, as you see there. Oh, you'll sometimes see a transaction failed here. This is actually something we need to work on. This transaction is not failed. If we click here, you'll see it's still mining. So that's something we'll have to fix. Skulk, would you mind just noting that down to process later?
Okay, well, is that just the that it didn't fail?
Yeah, we have an erroneous failing message.
Okay, I will log that quickly.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm super happy about that. I think it's another part of a very critical thing. I think our liquidity is already at well above twice what it was before we started this. So so that's pretty damn nifty. Yeah. So the thing is, I think if we incorporate this going forward, we'll see if it gains further traction. But I'm already fairly happy with it. If we incorporate this further, then I mean, my suggestion is going to be that we keep the permafrost, the permanent part of the of how we distribute Fry, and we keep this a permanent quality of how we distribute Fry. I think we'll actually, by the end of the sale, by the way, guys, we've reached a landmark. We are now 500 of the 2,000 buckets in, so we're 1/4 into our sale already. I did some stats with just shy of $100,000 raised in total.
So really quick, before I end here, you can see my balance has now been unstaked. So that's the whole cycle here.
Okay, cool.
Stop sharing. Go ahead, Skulk. Continue.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So far I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, it's been running just over 1 day now, and yeah, we've more than doubled the amount of liquidity that we had. Which means that when people arbitrage the sale into the market, that will actually have less of an impact on the price. It actually means that people can buy larger amounts of Fry now. I already saw that like amounts that I had to buy for different reasons was you know the percentage impact it had on the price was already vastly improved. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how it's going now. My next suggestion is going to be that we make this kind of program sort of a permanent feature of how we distribute the Fry, along with the permafrost, which means that you know, we actually have an incredibly robust secondary market. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy. Hopefully we have a video out in the next day or two, just with regards to telling people how to actually like do this whole thing end to end. Yeah, I've also run Twitter ads on this, which previously have proven pretty productive. But like I'm not getting a lot of draw from it now, and it's like a few people are fairly surprised at how high the APY is. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on why that might be.
Yeah, I don't know. I would expect the high APY to attract people right away. People might they might just be unfamiliar with Fry, and they might see the APY and think like, oh, okay, well, if I get in and get out, is the liquidity too thin for me to actually make a profit? That's one way we could maybe explain it, but I'm not sure. I really don't know. I mean, the sale does put a downward pressure on the price, so that might be something people figure in as well.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it stays this high though, because it's really, really high. I mean, there's enough people who want Fry to, yeah, for this to not quite make sense to me yet. But okay, but maybe it's just a function of exposure.
Yeah, I mean, you're also only almost 2 days in, so maybe give it some more time. I think there was no hype prior to this, so there was no hype buildup, which maybe has an effect as well. So yeah, you literally started kind of promoting the farming when you guys launched it. So maybe that's as well, because I've seen on some of the other projects, there's quite a bit of build up in terms of this is going to happen in 2 or 3 days, and yeah. So I mean, yeah, again, we are generally not about the hype, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can tweet with a straight face. So excited, big announcement coming.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird line to walk. I mean, there's so many, okay, I'll say shit projects, but there's also just projects that focus a lot more on hype than on building things. And I don't want, I mean, that makes me sound like pretty high and mighty, but it's hard to balance like how much hype is appropriate, and yeah, I think we tend to almost instinctually lean more in the direction of building something or putting something together. And Skalk, I think you and I both, well, me especially, I I tend to neglect marketing because it just there's a lot of shit out there that's like, oh, all the hype, as you say, to tweet something like big announcement coming, very excited, is just feels a bit slimy to me. But maybe that's a weakness of ours.
I don't know if I could quite get to big announcement. I don't know. I can imagine myself getting there if there was like a lot of social momentum. Then I can imagine myself getting there just because, we're sort of rah-ing everyone. But just do it, I don't know. Like it feels transparent at this point, that it's probably mild. Whatever we're gonna say is probably mild. We're trying to make it sound bigger than it is. So no, but anyway, I do think the farming thing is going to go pretty well. Yeah, I'm very excited about us building up some of this here DAO structure. And also I'm very excited about that Elm dev of ours actually taking some of Smoke Signal forward. By the way, guys, were any of you active on social media the last 2 weeks since the United States election?
No.
Yeah, it's just Twitter, like the general watching crypto stuff, but you can't help seeing all the election stuff as well.
All the election stuff, yeah. Basically, there's now this whole meme wave of all these historic announcements. Like the one was Paul saying, "What the hell? Why are we invading Iraq? There's no WM. There's no conclusive proof of WMDs there." And then Twitter. Then they have this little Twitter notice. This is a disputed. This is disputed by official sources. Like the little link at the bottom. So anyway, and the other one was by what's the guy who yelled "The English are coming"? Who was that dude?
Oh, I don't know, but yeah.
Anyway, as the only North American among us, you should know what's his freaking name.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, anyway, yeah.
But then that was at the bottom as well. Like this is disputed by official sources.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if I understand where you're going with that, I mean, the social media platforms we rely on today are just getting so heavy-handed and opinionated with what is and isn't acceptable to say on their platforms, which, there's a big debate on this online where, one of the things you'll hear is like, well, they're privately owned companies, so they really have the right to dictate what goes on under their rules. And then this is viewed as sort of a difficult conundrum. It's like, well, we would like these platforms to be free speech oriented, but at the same time, if we treat Twitter like its own sort of sovereign entity, then it should have the right to, kick whoever off it wants. But then, of course, one thing that's not brought up in these debates a lot is that what we need, of course, is platforms that aren't owned by anything. And then now that brings me to a shameless plug, and I truly mean shameless plug of Smoke Signal. We need platforms like that, and yeah, it's just speaking aloud about that. As Skalk was saying earlier, we used to have some of our community used to be interested in the products Die Hard and Smoke Signal, and then that conversation has died down, and I think that's a natural consequence of us having these products but not marketing them. And the reason we don't market them is because we want to build Foundry to sort of do that for us. We are two well-known individuals. In fact, we're having public Zoom calls on YouTube. That's about as public as you can get. And so we're pretty reluctant to push something like Smoke Signal, but especially something like Die Hard, where the whole point there is it's an unhealable hole in currency control. So I mean, that for me adds a lot of urgency to building governance and getting to the point where Foundry is autonomous, and Foundry autonomy actually includes 3 things. I think we're all in agreement on this. The one is governance itself needs to be built. That's obviously crucial. Another one is that the treasury needs to be big enough for the governance to be able to do something interesting. So Foundry is built with only 100. Interesting, yeah. If Foundry is built, but there's only 100 DAI in the treasury, then that's also a failure scenario. So the treasury needs to be big. And then the other one is to have intelligent FRI holders who who express their intelligence through votes. That's another thing we need to work on. And on that topic, actually, I'm trying to wrestle with, like, how do we get more engagement from people the kinds of people that we would like to hand Foundry control off to. Ultimately, when Foundry is actually autonomous, I won't be able to safely play much of a leadership role because I'm so well known. Team Toast in general will be at most a participant. And so how do we get those people that will eventually be the stewards of Foundry? How do we get people, and these should probably be pseudonymous, people that are very comfortable with securely maintaining their pseudonymity. Where do we find them? How do we get them? And then I'll add to that, and this is just, I guess I'm just speaking through my thought process here. I think there's three kinds of pseudonymous actors we need. We need people who are voters, so the people who make proposals and vote on them, just the friars. We need contractors, so we need pseudonymous individuals who will actually work for Foundry to do the real world actions. That could be like marketing or research, or even building physical products. Whatever it is that Foundry needs to do beyond interaction with Ethereum, it relies on these third actors, these contractors. And then aside from those two, we need thought leaders. And this kind of overlaps with the voters, but we need people who are willing to look at Foundry's position and think, what can Foundry do to make profit and make an impact on the world in the way that we would want? And ask these larger questions, think about them deeply, start a conversation, which would then eventually lead to a vote by the Fry holders. So that's what I've been thinking about lately. It would be easy to focus just on the mechanics. How do we build Foundry for the governance to work? But that's only half of it's only a third of the solution. And as I said earlier, the other 1/3 is the treasury, and the other third, which is what I'm focusing on now, is the pseudonymous actors that actually make up Foundry. Where do we find them, and how do we start to get the community to communicate and coordinate and learn how to think like Foundry? So, yeah, sorry for that tangent. Any thoughts from either of you guys?
Yeah.
Your video's off.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, so basically, I think at the moment something like Smoke Signal is super topical. If we actually had Smoke Signal up already, I just think that we could.
Well, it
because
is up.
I think in a more user friendly iteration of itself. If I can put it that way. Not that it is actually fully functional. Really, it's such a leap forward from where those poor Chinese people had to, post that thing in raw text to the Ethereum blockchain. We're now at the stage where you could just use the thing as an actual real product.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we just very basically had a nicer interface up, and if we actually had the capacity for people to just interact with it maybe slightly cheaper, something like this whole thing about, it's the sitting president of the United States that's being censored on Twitter. It is insane. It is insane to think that. Really, even if they thought he was crazy, just censor people who support him, then don't censor him. It just doesn't seem like a wise strategy to me. But anyway, so I think if Smoke Signal had more visibility at this point, I think Streisand effect on Smoke Signal would be very high. I watched the Snowden movie the other day, and just to put it into perspective, first of all, leakers have never been treated well. So if you're a whistleblower out there, basically, I would strongly recommend that if you do it because you think you're going to get support, read up on the history of how badly whistleblowers get treated. Both in the corporate and in the government sector. It's 1 in 100 that have a positive, who even just have positive press, and they still get treated incredibly badly. So I think if we had something like Smoke Signal up, you could. What I sort of envision is someone would leak something that they feel ethically obligated to leak, and then maybe all they have is $1,000, but they burn the $1,000 just to show, come, I'm serious, this is an issue. and then somebody else could see that and go, holy crap, this is the moon landing was fake, or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And this is like legit proof. And then they might have more money, so they can burn like $10,000 on it,
Mhm.
or that kind of a thing. And I think that in this environment, where we have this high amount of conflict about what is true,
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it was coming, but it's just at a ludicrous point now. It's really like, and I can see it getting far, far worse.
Mhm.
I mean, people don't agree on how serious COVID is. Really, like right there, that's such a critical freaking thing from my perspective. And I'm not saying I'm right. From my perspective, I'm like, well, look, that's serious, But other people are like, we better stay home, else, grandma's gonna die. So, still after where we now 7 months, 8 months, I don't know,
Yeah.
of this whole
So-
thing. So,
So what you're saying, if I could summarize all that, is that at least near the end, you were sort of getting to the point that smoke signal can add like a fundamental kind of incorruptibility to the system. So that's like part of what you're saying, is that it can't be censored, and you can post something there as a whistleblower, and pseudonymously too, which is a part that you didn't mention explicitly, but you can do it without revealing your identity, without having to trust some journalist. Like, Edward Snowden got lucky with Glenn Greenwald. Got lucky that Glenn Greenwald wasn't, going to rat on him essentially. Smoke signal can play that part, and it's not going to rat on you. And then on top of that, what you're saying with the burning to signal, I think that's a key point about smoke signal. You can essentially pay for visibility without anyone's permission, and then the community can burn in solidarity. When I post something, someone else can burn to add to its visibility, and yeah, I think it could be a really good base layer that we could then iterate from to get somewhere else.
Yeah, I was listening to, I mean, for those of the guys who don't know and are interested in the technicality, I mean, smoke signal is pretty efficient gas-wise already. All it really does is just emits an event with, text in it, what we then scan. I mean, we can even get the event out and just go look at the call data, for instance, just the stuff that went to the blockchain doesn't even really need to get processed. So it's already fairly efficient. And I think the future versions of Ethereum outside of our own scaling plans actually make this thing very, very viable. Like if we had multiple hundreds of shards, and we just had the same address that we initiated from the same account basically on every shard, then we could scale this thing as much as Ethereum scales.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel it actually has a lot of real potential. And I also think in terms of the leak thing, just like there are a lot of entities there, even outside of governments and that kind of stuff, who want information to be visible somehow, and to, and just to tell the community or society that, listen, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm freaking serious about what I'm saying here. This does have a real impact. It's important, and it's important that you know about it. And anyway, but one thing at the moment we can see, for instance, when I say smoke signal isn't ready, what I mean pretty much mostly is that on the one hand, it doesn't really have a universal view where you can just sort by, how can I say, the burn and the decay on the burn. So how much did the guy burn and how long ago did he burn? That's the one thing.
Like a Reddit front page is what you're trying to get to. Something
Yeah,
like a Reddit.
well,
So there's
well, yeah,
a sense
two
of
things.
now. There's a sense of oh, this stuff is happening sort of now.
Exactly, yeah. Or this happened long ago, but this guy was so serious that it's still probably relevant.
Yeah.
That kind of thinking behind it. So
Yeah,
I think,
so that guy who burned. So most of the smoke signal posts are. I think there's there's one or two, if any, posts that are above $10 or $20, except for one that was $100. Someone burned $100 on the post, and if that sounds interesting, it wasn't one of us, by the way. We don't know who it was, although I have a suspicion, but I don't know. But we don't know who that was, and if you're interested in that, go check it out. It's easy to find on Smoke Signal because it's the most burned one. But
Yeah.
that was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, at the time, and still currently, no one's really watching Smoke Signal. So that's something we need to get over. We need to the extent that that it's the right strategic move to focus on Smoke Signal. That would obviously, we need to, as Skulk says, I think that's the right idea, to get the front page more looking or feeling like a front page. Another benefit of that, by the way, is that people could, if it's understood what gets you to the front page, so there could be a little message like if you post a message worth more than $30, or you burn more than $30, and that number will go down as time goes on, you'll get to the front page. That could be something the user could know, which would sort of invite more engagement. By the way, for those of you who are watching this and you maybe aren't familiar with Smoke Signal, I'd also want to add that there's the profit. I want to add the profit motive, because that sort of links it back to Foundry. Smoke Signal, if you go there, you'll see there's a checkbox that's default checked. It says donate 1% to the makers of this tool or something like that. And that 1% goes back to Foundry. And so far, out of all the users of Smoke Signal, only one person has not donated. Only one person has actually unchecked that box. Unfortunately, it was the $100 guy. So that's pretty sad, actually. I would have really liked to have a full die in profit, but oh well. Yeah, so, another plan on Smoke Signal that's been bouncing around a lot is to sell it as something like a Medium. Some people use Medium to put a piece of text up just to have it on the internet, and then they link to that later. And Medium is also nice because it kind of defaults to give you a little bit of exposure and SEO. So you can have, it's like getting a web page up on the internet without having to make a website, in a way. That's kind of how I've treated it. And we could do something really similar with Smoke Signal if we let people determine the title and the description, and then we make sure that is translated into a static page. Then, that static page, of course, isn't linked directly to the blockchain. So it's not necessarily as permanent as the Smoke Signal post itself that lives on the blockchain. But for as long as the, our mirror, our Smoke Signal mirror stays up, which should happen unless Smoke Signal is very big, then yeah, you can use this as something like Medium, but it won't get censored, and you can say whatever you want, and you don't need to reveal your identity, which is pretty cool. Oh, and another thing about Smoke Signal is people can tip you for your post. So if I post something and people really like it, they can actually, anybody can donate to the post and it'll get routed to me. Some of the posts on Smoke Signal have a little bit of these tips.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just having watched the Snowden thing recently, like I said, was, I think it would have been interesting if you had a platform like this around a large leak like that. Because, like, I think a lot of smaller people would maybe start leaking things, and when we say it's pseudonymous, I mean, we can actually make the argument that you can use it totally anonymously. Like, I think we could extend the way that you post to maybe like include something like tornado.cash or something, and then basically have the whole round trip be pretty ZK snark. You wouldn't actually be able to see where the money really originated, and if the guy
well, so it's pseudonymous. So pseudonymous just means fake name. And in a way, you could just say that's optional anonymity, but there's always a name. Technically, there's an Ethereum address attached to what you say. You could, of course, you could attach your real identity, or you could, as Skulk is saying now, you could limit all the engagement with that particular identity so much so that that's not attached to anything else, anyone ever sees on the internet, and then it's essentially anonymous. But,
and I'm saying we could integrate that. We could integrate that straight into how things work, basically, in the back end. So well, how it works in the front end, so that you could have like a tick that says "keep me anonymous," and that you have to explicitly untick it to reuse the same thing. And then maybe an additional step on top of that could be no, use my .eth domain. I want to be skulk.eth, basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, so listen, in terms of the governance stuff we've been discussing, you want to segue into that?
Yeah. So, and this is a conversation I'm really eager to start having with other people as well. Starting to feel a little bit lonely in these discussions, guys. As I was saying earlier, I want to get a community of pseudonymous people to help start contributing to this thinking. Foundry seems to be alone in the crypto scene to have the emphasis on being unbullyable, specifically to be a DAO that can do things that are profitable, ethical, and possibly illegal. There are many other DAOs, but they're mostly focused on sort of playing by the rules, or at least not deliberately breaking the rules. Foundry is meant to be a little different in that way. And that means the design needs to withstand a certain kinds of attacks that other DAOs don't need to withstand. A lot of the DAOs out there are associated heavily with legal structures, for example, and Foundry can't be. Yeah, so anyway, one of the attacks that Foundry needs to be able to withstand, and I wrote about this in the forum. I will make a note to include the link there in this video that we'll put on YouTube. But basically the attack is, all DAOs that have tradable tokens are susceptible to this attack, where some attacker can buy up a lot of the tokens and then come to governance, and they have so much of the tokens that they can veto any decision that is in progress, and they can unilaterally pass anything that they propose. So they've essentially taken over the DAO. With a DAO like Foundry, where the point is to be unbullyable, the attack, we need to model this attack as being much more powerful, because with a regular DAO, this attacker is probably just motivated to take whatever's in the treasury and run. So then you could say, well, as long as the attack is more expensive to carry out than the rewards they get out of the treasury, we can sort of reason that this won't happen. But with Foundry, that's not really the case, because if Foundry is meant to do things boldly that pisses some jurisdiction off, and if that jurisdiction has a lot of money, then it's no longer, oh, if it's too expensive, they won't do it, or if they can't make money on this, they won't do it, because it might be something more like a point of pride. There's all those novels written about revenge, where the main character is spends 10 years pursuing his revenge. I mean, that guy is not making a profit. He's going for something a lot more visceral, and you can model the large agencies as having similar reactions to something. Die Hard is, if it gets successful, it could be very offensive to any agency that wants to control currency. And if Foundry is unapologetically pursuing that, then one of these agencies, or all of them together, could decide to throw a lot of money at Foundry just to stop it, even if they don't make a profit. Or put another way, their profit will be to stop Foundry. So that means this challenge is bigger than most other DAOs face. So that's the framing of the problem. Do you want to add anything to the framing of the problem, Skulk, or should I just jump into the selling the farm idea?
Okay, so if I can just repeat the framing of the problem. So the idea is that where normally the attack might be to just steal whatever is in the treasury, in our case, it's also to stop whatever we're up to, which is actually also a problem that Ethereum faces and that Bitcoin faces. And I'd like to say that Bitcoin and Ethereum have the advantages that they are the ecosystem. So in other words, changes that could be made by the network to the software could solve that. Whereas the problem for us is we are a much smaller network inside of the software. So nobody's going to hard fork to say Foundry. Yeah.
And the market cap is vastly different as well.
Yeah. It's a much different market cap. I think it'll do well, but it is a much different market cap. But I mean, options that are not open to us, for instance, is with Ethereum, with proof of stake. If somebody begins attacking Ethereum, then the simplest possible thing to do if they find a successful attack is fork away from them. So in other words, take the software and just have that account no longer have any coins, and problem solved essentially. So we don't have that as an option. And also so we're much smaller, and we might make some entity much angrier. And then the thing is, we have some activity that might be profitable or mildly profitable, or the fry holders just like it. You basically had Project Freedom Finger,
Yeah.
where
So
everyone shows up to the
yeah. So Project Freedom Finger would be a theoretical. This is not something I would suggest doing, by the way, but just to make the point. Operation Freedom Finger would be something that Foundry and Fry might decide to vote in, where they start paying people to go in front of the White House and hold up the middle finger, respectable distance, but just to be offensive to the White House. And now I don't think we should design Foundry to do that specifically, but we should design Foundry in such a way that if it decides to do that, it should be able to sort of exercise that will and be able to continue operating, even though it might upset the government. So that's the framing. So yeah, I can jump into the selling the farm idea now, unless you had something else to add.
Well, I mean, the farm metaphor. Okay, I don't think the farm metaphor includes angering the Orange Emperor.
No.
But yeah, jump into it.
Okay, well, I don't know how appropriate the metaphor is exactly, but here's the thing is, you have this large, financially speaking, an incredibly large entity that wants to take over a relatively small entity, and they can swamp it with money. If we can build Foundry such that when that happens, the existing owners of Foundry can actually become wealthy, even as Foundry is lost, then it's actually not so much of a failure scenario. And so the metaphor here is, if you are a small family that owns a farm and someone wants to build a highway through your farm, that might seem to be a very sad thing. But if they have to pay you for the farm, you can charge a lot. You could maybe charge 100 times of what it's worth. And then, okay, you have to leave your farm, but you have so much more money, you can go start 3 other farms somewhere else. And so if we can build Foundry to where when this attack comes, that financial weight actually transfers to the Fry holders, even if Foundry has to be dissolved, and even if then the treasury assets themselves are taken over, the Fry holders can then leave Foundry and just go make other things like Foundry. What's the word? Different versions of Foundry, maybe one bigger version of Foundry. But the point is that this attack would ultimately be futile in that case, if that dynamic was in place, because whatever action it is that this bullying organization is trying to stop by throwing money at the problem, they actually in the long term are just feeding the same problem. Because first of all, the people that were responsible for doing it got away with more money, they made a profit. And second of all, that profit will then just incentivize them to do it again. I mean, if Foundry does Operation Freedom Finger, and then the US government's response is to buy out Foundry just to stop the operation, well, that turns out that was a profitable operation, and probably people will just go do it again. Maybe that'll work a second time, And this can keep happening for as long as the attacking enemy wants to throw money at the problem. But then, of course, in reality, it wouldn't. I mean, if this dynamic is in place, the upset agent, this upset large entity simply wouldn't engage in this attack at all, because they would be able to see what would happen down the road. So that would be a good way to solve the problem. But now, how to actually achieve that, we're still stuck on that. So how do you make it to where when this large entity comes and they buy up so much Foundry governance that Foundry is forfeit, essentially, it's been taken over? How do you make it that all of the Fry holders, and especially the voters, because they're the governance, the governors, we could call them, they're even more important to protect in a way. But in any case, all of the Fry holders should be able to leave the project with more money than they had before the attack started. And we need to make sure that the holders can get away, because if they can't, then they'll not have an interest in joining Foundry, because the stack might come. But especially the governors, because if the governors are the ones left with nothing, then obviously no one's going to want to be a governor. Or the governors will just make decisions that aren't very brave and aren't very bold, because they want to avoid the attack altogether. So that's the puzzle. How do we make sure that when this attack happens, if it happens, that all or at least most of the Fry holders can get away at a profit?
just want to say this, like there's an article on the Mises.org website about it's about 100 years ago, where there was some cookie manufacturer, some biscuit manufacturer, who tried to corner the market for biscuits, I think in New York or something, by buying up all the competition. And eventually, like in a very defeated sort of a memo, they said that, listen, this is a complete fool's errand that we're on, because every time we buy one, we basically signal to the market that we're in the market to buy cookie factories. So another cookie factory like pops up, and we basically pay for this. There was another example of the Chinese at one point tried to invade Japan by buying up all the Japanese swords. Lo and behold, when they finally got to Japan, they saw, holy crap, everyone has like a lot of swords. So that problem might actually be, it might be a non-problem. I mean, it might be just purely within the concept of having a DAO, that runs things like Operation Freedom Finger. Once people start buying things like that, once governments start buying things like that, it signals that this is a very profitable enterprise. Like we can make more of these things. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, Skulk is cutting out. Maybe I'm cutting out.
Skulk.
He got too excited. He blew out his internet. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, at least we have his happy face there. He's so happy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think I froze up there for a second. But
yeah, he froze up in a very happy face. So. Anyway.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. At least that face, But yeah, so I think even maybe without us really going out of our way to do it, but I do like the idea that we're going out of our way to do it, and I have a bunch of ideas we can get into now. That there might just be more of a problem really than a solution for anyone who tries to buy us out. I think that the other thing as well as that I think people need to keep in mind is that.
Let me actually add something to what you said. I want to make that, because it does suddenly strike me as a non-problem as well, because. And maybe this is part of what you meant by bringing up those metaphors, but this attacker is not going to be buying Fry up in a vacuum. They'll be pumping the price, which there's two aspects to that. First of all, the more they buy, the more expensive it is. And second of all, the more they buy, the more people are going to FOMO into what seems to be a pump. And they'll just, oh, wow, the price of Foundry is going crazy. It looks like whether as an outside, so let's say this attack is going on now, and then I as a non-Fry holder see this, and I'm like, well, I'm not sure whether that's an attacker trying to take over Foundry, or whether it's an investor who's excited about Foundry, or whether it's just some libertarian hardcore guy who's finally sold that Foundry is going to do what it says it's going to do. But either way, I mean, they seem pretty serious in this, so I'm just going to jump in now and try to ride this wave. And what's interesting now, as I'm thinking about that, is all three of those cases are essentially, there's not actually a fundamental difference between the government trying to buy up Foundry and a libertarian guy, because they're both paying for influence over Foundry, right? They're both actually buying the same thing. And if Foundry is doing things to where influence over Foundry becomes valuable in that way, then it won't just, this sort of implies that the same moment the government wants to pile in and buy that influence, other people will be buying in as well. And so if the government isn't already facing an impossible task of buying up so much they take over governance, I mean, that could be practically impossible because of how tokenomics work. Not only that, other people are going to be following suit and buying in as well. So. Yeah.
So just in terms of the so in terms of our design at the moment, our design includes 3 or 6 months, or a very long period anyway, where you have to wait in the exit lounge. So when you want to participate in governance, you've got to put it into a governance staking contract, which will give you some rewards, which not EBD, but so currently what would happen is someone would buy up an incredible amount of Fry, right? So everyone who's governing Foundry at that point now is to wait 6 months to get out. Right. And I think this might be a real problem for them though, right? Because they might be very good at their jobs. They might actually really like, and might be an issue for them, because the thing is, if Foundry has certain, let's say Foundry has a lot of MKR and a lot of Ether, argument's sake, and it's just running Zimbabwe. It's all it's really doing at some point in time. Now the Zimbabwean government goes to the South African government, tells them, listen, just print as much money as you can to buy this damn thing, and let's just delete these domains, right? So now they buy this, the price starts to spike up, people pour into this thing, and eventually the attacker pours in, right? The attacker pours in with sufficient fry, which is another part of this discussion we can have, because currently we're thinking of like 66% for getting a successful proposal. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. But okay, so
that's 66% of people who voted. By the way, we don't have a quorum, and you can read the white paper for more on
yeah,
that.
yeah, we have no quorum system, right? So 66% of the people who are involved in governance. So now the attacker. So the assumption is we had less than 66% in the active governance. The rest was on the open market. Someone comes along, he chucks this in, and now he starts doing very destructive things, right? So he like takes all our maker and he takes all our ether, right? Those are the proposals that he makes. Those take about 8 days to clear. And now, okay, so now a few things have happened, right? So a bunch of people have climbed out of Fry and are now super wealthy, right? They are now very, very well off because they sold the peak of this guy getting in. They didn't know that was what was happening. So that's group A. Then there's group B. Group B are now the people who are still in on the open market and who see, oh crap, shit's gone sideways, we got to sell. So they sell the price down to pretty much diddly squat, right? So they get out maybe half of what they put in. And now you have all the poor guys who are doing a good job on the inside of the governance, and they're in trouble, right? Because they are, they're 33% of the governance amount. By the time they get out 6 months from now, there wouldn't be anything left, really. Right, so that's a serious risk that someone would take to govern. I suppose market intelligence would somehow price that in. People would price in, like, I can't go in with all my fry. I can have some fry on the outside, so that if the shit rallies, that I can sell a lot of it. So maybe that's already a. I must say, I think we sometimes underestimate market intelligence. Like people will make decisions like that. They will go, well, if I get attacked, I need to sell as the price is spiking, so that guy might also be well off, even without us really attempting to protect him. But let's assume he goes all in. He just wants to govern. He doesn't really take into account that he might have an irrational, vengeful actor on his hands, and the irrational, vengeful actor enters. Then sort of like the question we're really grappling with now is, what do we do for that guy? Because group A is not a problem, group B is a mild problem, but group C might be a legit problem.
Right, and yeah, that gets to what I was saying earlier about if we don't ensure that the governors have that same guarantee of being able to exit richer than before the attack happened, then you have a serious problem with incentive for governance. Either you'll have a combination of people not wanting to govern in the first place because they know that they could be susceptible to that, and coupled with that, the governors who are in there would be afraid to vote in anything that would invite that kind of attack, and that's obviously not, then that would lead to Foundry itself having you could say a weak-willed personality because it's afraid of being attacked in that way. So it's essential that the governors have a way out in that scenario. Okay. I think maybe we could cut it out here. I think we're just over 50 minutes, and I'd hate to go over the hour mark. And
okay, I'd really like one more round of questions though.
Let's do it.
I can ask you and Hanu something, and then
okay.
Well, Abu. By the way, welcome, Abu.
Oh, hey, Abu. Didn't see you there.
Okay. Can I ask us one more round of questions?
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. There's the Pimp Meister. I've never seen the Pimp Meister in person. How's it going, my man? I think you're muted, hey?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I don't want to disturb the meeting, so I just have to mute my mic like I'm driving.
Cool, man. No worries. Okay, so yeah, so my question is Logan, like, let's assume you were not building Foundry, but you are participating in Foundry. How would you go about distributing your fry if you knew that this attack was possible? In other words, you knew that it was possible for someone to buy up a crap load of your fry, and then enter governance and then attack you. If you knew it was possible, how would you distribute your founding tokens?
Oh yeah. Well, are you? So you're asking me now as a founder? It was a tough question because honestly, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my tokens as this thing takes off. As I said earlier, I don't want to be a thought leader. By the time Foundry is, let's say, getting into the public spotlight, I want to be pretty fucking hands off. I'd like to start a family. I don't want enemies, and I think if Foundry is not capable of making enemies, I don't think we've actually done what we said we're going to do. So and answering to that question, which maybe isn't what you intended to ask, I sort of think I'll be handing it to others that I trust, giving that kind of voting weight to people I trust. Now, if I'm just a regular person, if I'm not me and I'm looking to participate, I have some fry, let's say I'm pseudonymous, and I feel like it's not a risk for me to participate in governance. Yeah, it's hard to say. I guess I would just, as you implied earlier, I would keep some fry on the outside. But it also depends on what the rewards are for governance. I think our plan at this moment is that we will be rewarding people for governance. And in fact, it might be sort of an ancestor of our current staking program. So to stake fry, you have to participate in governance. And so it might be something of a financial cost benefit analysis. How much fry do I want to put in and gain some extra fry by staking? And what, I'd probably want to keep some outside of that just in case there is this risk. I mean, I guess if I could sort of simulate the attack and get an idea of how much the attacker would have to spend, and rather how much the price would have to skyrocket in order for the attack to be successful, I could reason, well, okay, as long as I have enough outside of Foundry or outside of governance to where when that attack happens, my profit from that pays off what I'll lose from inside of governance, then I'm happy. But I still want to keep some in governance because I might as well have some in there to, in the meantime, well, that might not be true. If I think this attack is going to, the more likely I think this attack is going to be, the more likely I'm going to have moved my fry out of governance. And that might be a problem actually, because then the more likely the attack seems, the more people would leave governance preemptively.
Which also makes the attack more likely.
Yes, that's what, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, anyway, I'm going to write about what I think one possible approach to this is, but just more out of a mental exercise than anything else. Okay, well, cool, guys. Albu, it was great actually seeing you for the first time.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Logan, pleasure as always.
Oh, yes. Alrighty. Okay, I'll stop the
Thanks,
recording
guys.
here. Thanks.
Nice
Cheers.
meeting you guys.
Cheers, Albu. Bye.